Hello everyone, welcome back to a new video in Crash That Code. Today we're going to be going back to the Xcode playgrounds to learn some more exciting stuff in Swift. So let's open up our Xcode. There we go. Let's click Get Started with the playground as usual. And we're going to create optionals in Swift tutorial. Create next. Let's create that project. Have a little cough. And let's expand this fully. Once again, let's just delete this code. And we don't need to worry about any of this import UIKit stuff. Let's enter a few lines and let's get into this. So, as we've explained before, or as you've seen in previous code, there's these things called nil, exclamation marks, does not equal. There's question marks that we'll get into what those simplify. And there's a bunch of symbols, and these are all optionals. And now I'm going to explain what they're used for. So let's create a variable first. Let's create var number, and we'll make it of type int, and we'll put a question mark next to it, and I'll explain what that does. And we'll type 15, okay? Right? So now let's go and look at this question mark. So what does this question mark do? This question mark basically is saying that this int may or may not have a value in it. And what that basically means is this may be nil, which means empty, which means it doesn't have anything in it, or it may be 15. So what this becomes useful in later code just to make sure that you have a value inside your variable. And although you won't understand now because we're obviously predefining our variables, so we're pretty much guaranteed that there'll be a value in it. Later on, you'll be extracting variables and you may not know if there's going to be a value in it. And just to save check, you want to unwrap that value, that optional basically, which is this question mark. And in order to unwrap that, this is what we do. So we say if let, and I'll explain what this does, number equals number, or let's call it number check equals number. And then we want to print there is a, and I'll explain what this if let number is. There is a number in number, right? And then we'll do our normal else statement. And then say print, or not private, print there is no number in number. It has a nil value. Okay? Okay, so basically now let me just run through all of this and explain what it is. So, we have this var number int with a question mark in it, and what this question mark is basically saying is that this number variable may or may not have a value in it, okay? So it may be nil or it may be not nil, and I know it's confusing to think of it as empty because we've predefined a value over here, but when you get later into coding, you'll be getting values for your variables from external sources, which you may not know if they're empty or not empty. For example, you might want the text from a text box, but the user hasn't entered the text box, so that's why you would use the optional. So you might say var text box, and we'll make it of type string, question mark, equals whatever you want it to, right? And the user may not have entered anything in the text box, so that's why you want the optional there. So that when you unwrap it down here, and we'll explain what that is, you get a value out of it, and you know for sure that it won't crash. And we'll explain what this crashing stuff is and what unwrapping optionals is. So now what we do here is something very important, and basically what this is doing is it's a safety check to basically safeguard your code from crashing. And there's two ways to do this, and I'll explain the second way after. So what this is basically doing is it's saying if let number check, so we're creating a new variable called number check, right, equals number. then we want to print here. There is a number and number. And basically what this is showing us is this is checking if number is nil or not. So for example, if we put a comma here and then take this number check value and paste it down here, you're going to see 15 print below, right? And this is because what has happened here is we've set number check equal to number, and at the same time we're also checking if number is nil or it is not nil. And since number is not nil because it equals 15, it prints this out. There is a number and number check, right? So then let's just try changing this value of 15. Let's try changing it to 0. Let's see what happens. So still as you can see, there is a number and number, which is 0. And this is because this 0, it doesn't mean it's empty. It means there's still a value set to number, which is 0. It doesn't mean it's empty. The only time when it would be empty is if it was set to nil. And so now let's see what happens. So there's no number in number. It has a nil value. So before we do this unwrapping stuff, let's try printing number and see what happens. So, as you can expect, it's going to print nil. And once again, let's take that text box example, okay? Let's go down here and comment some stuff. So let's take the text box example. So as a coder, I want to maybe get the username. So let's say I want to get the username of a user, right? And in order to do that, I want the user to enter some text in the text field. Enter text, right? So let's just say I'm going to take the value of this. I'm going to take the value of this text field. So I'm going to say I want the text field value. However, and then in addition to that, we're going to say that I also want to store this text field value in a database, right? Value in a database, right? So now we're saying, so let me just run this scenario again with you guys. And then we're also going to say I want to then call this text field value from the database, right? So right now we're going through 4 different steps. So the first, and this is just an example to help you understand why this optional stuff is required. So username of a user. So basically in my app, I want the user to enter some text in a text field, okay? So, and then when the user is done entering that text, I want to get that text, I want to get the value of that text field and then store it in a database. And then sometime later in my app, I want to call this text field from the database. However, let's say I'm calling the value of the text field when it's empty, when there's nothing in it. So I'll get nil, right? So then let's say I want to store nil inside my database. So it stores nil inside my database for this value of number. But then when I call it, it's going to give me an error. Like let's say I want to display it as a label, the text field as a label, right? Let's just say the text field's name is Rohan, right? Let's say I now want to take Rohan and display it as a name label. It won't be able to do that because now what the problem is, it's nil. So that's why it's important to go through these steps. So now instead of number check, let's just change it up a bit. Let's say name, right? We're going to say name. So basically, let's assume that Rohan is in a database, and over here we're calling it. So now we're saying if let name, and ignore the error just goes away like that. So now let's say name is equal to Rohan. Let's say number is equal to Rohan. Let's make it of type string. Right, we'll make this Rohan. Or we'll make it nil for now. I'll name it username, right? So it's username, right? So then what we're doing over here is, now let's say the name is nil. So in this case, we've safeguarded it so that it says there's no number in number, it has a nil value. So we've safeguarded this error output that the user might have not been able to enter this username. So this allows our code to not crash, because if we didn't have this fallout, this else statement, it would have crashed because it wouldn't have known what to do with this nil value. And so that, even though this might sound confusing, we will refine your optionals and it will get more clear as we begin to use it in our code. This is more of just an introductory video to this kind of category of what an optional is. As we begin to build mini apps and actual apps, you'll soon understand what the importance of it is. This kind of concludes this video. Up next will be an information about dictionaries. After dictionaries in Swift, we'll talk about classes. And lastly, after classes, we'll start getting into building and prototyping some famous apps out there. And then after that, I will help you in building your own app. And so that's kind of the roadmap for this playlist ahead. Anyways, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe.